This is Module 2, Lesson 16, Dividing Decimals. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to set up our problem. The number in the house is the first number. It's the dividend, and the number on the outside is the divisor. So we're going to try to find the quotient. So I look at the 32 and I ask myself, can 32 go into 9? It cannot, so I'm putting the 0. It is very important I do this step even though I know that I'm really going into 90. It will help me with my decimals. So how many times does 32 go into 90? For those of you who need it, you can at that point go on the side and do 32 times 2 and 32 times 3. And I see it can only go in 2 times, so I write the 2 at the top. And I know it's 64, and I subtract. And I bring down the next number. And now I'm not sure how many times 32 can go into 264, so I do some more math on the side. I just keep doing my multiples. Move this farther down because I'll need that space. And that looks like it's close enough, which would be 32 times 8, so it goes in 8 times. And I saw that that made 256. And I subtract. Now, this is where we start working with the decimals. When I have a whole number, the decimal is at the end. And I have to remember that it's there even if they don't show it. So I'm going to move that right up. And I'm very careful that I always have one digit written on top of another digit. See how they're all right on top, nice and neat. So once I add that decimal, I can add a 0 and it doesn't change the value. And I can bring that 0 down. And I ask myself, how many times does 32 go into 80? And when I look at all the work I've already done, I know that it's 2. And I know that that's 64. That's easy for me to look at because I have the work done on the side already. And now I have a remainder which I'm not allowed to have in decimals. So I bring down another 0. And when I look, that's 5. And to check, I would do the same thing that I did when I did my regular check, and I would take the quotient of 28 and 25/100ths and multiply it by 32. So now I have my answer. There's no remainder, so that's what I should do with my decimals. So we're going to try another one. First thing I ask myself is how many times can 16 go into 4? Since it can't, I put a 0 up there. And I bring down the next number. How many times can 16 go into 45? If I'm not sure, just like before, not 45. I should be making my multiples of 16. And I see that 3 is too big, so it has to be 2. I already did the work, so I know it's 32, and I can subtract. And I bring down my next number. And I keep doing my multiples of 16 on the side. And when I do my multiples out, I see that it's going to be 8. And I subtract. And I have a remainder, which I'm not allowed to have. So just like before, I'm going to add a decimal because there's actually really a decimal there because it's a whole number. I'm going to add a 0, bring it down. I want to see how many times 16 can go into 80. And when I look at how many times, I see that it's 5. Now there's no remainder, so I'm good. And I have to make sure that I put that decimal right up where it is, which is why it's so important that each digit has a digit above it so that my decimal goes in the correct spot. Next, we're going to try one that already has a decimal in it to show us what to do. So the first thing I'm going to do is ask myself how many times can 26 go into 8, which is 0. And then I'm going to ask myself how many times can 26 go into 83, and we talked about doing some work on the side. And we see that it's 3. Carefully bringing down each number. And in this case, we see that it goes in. We don't need to add any zeros. The only thing we need to make sure of is we have to make sure that that decimal gets put in the correct spot. So now we're going to try one more with the decimal already in it. And the decimals, if you notice, are always in the dividend right now. We're not working with decimals in the divisors. So we ask ourselves how many times can 39 go into 4, which we know is 0. How many times can 39 go into 48, which we know is 1. What I like to do in this case is move the decimal there right away when I see it, when I get to that number. Now, how many times can 39 go into 93? If I'm not sure, I can go on the side and do some work. I'm making my multiples. And I see that it's 2, and it's 78. And I bring down my next number. And I want to see how many times 39 can go into 156. So I keep doing my multiples on the side to help me. And we know that it's 156 goes in 4 times. And the decimal's already up there, so we did a good job and we're done. So the last one that we're going to do together is 41 into 8 and 61/100ths. And we know that 41 can go into 8 0 times. And then we see how many times can 41 go into 86. I'm going to put that decimal up there. We know that's 2. And now we bring down that 1. And it goes in 1 time. And we don't need to add any zeros again. And that's how we divide decimals.